Well, not quite. Today we're discussing how AI may actually be reshaping our understanding of intelligence itself.
Hmm, that's an intriguing perspective. What led you to that conclusion?
Well, it's fascinating when you really dig into it. You see, we often think of AI as just a tool, but it's forcing us to re examine the very nature of intelligence. For instance, did you know that AI systems can now become experts in new fields in a matter of hours or days, while it takes humans years to achieve that level of expertise?
That's mind-blowing. So, uh, are we talking about AI potentially surpassing human intelligence here?
Not necessarily surpassing, but definitely challenging our understanding of it. You know, one of our listeners, Jean Louis, made an interesting comparison. He likened AI development to our quest for flight. We didn't end up replicating birds, we created planes and helicopters that can fly in ways birds never could.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So you're saying that AI doesn't need to replicate human intelligence exactly to be useful or even to surpass us in certain areas?
Exactly. And this raises some really interesting questions about the nature of intelligence itself. Are we developing AI to understand intelligence better, or are we more focused on creating systems that can perform intelligent tasks?
Hmm, I would argue it's both. The process of creating AI forces us to really examine what intelligence is and how it works. But at the same time, we're driven by practical applications and the desire to create tools that can help us solve complex problems.
You're absolutely right. And it leads us to another intriguing concept that Jean Louis brought up, the idea of AI regulating AI. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly an interesting proposition. On one hand, AI might be better equipped to understand and monitor other AI systems. But on the other hand, can we trust AI to make ethical decisions about its own development and use?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it ties into larger questions about consciousness and self-awareness in AI. Jean Louis mentioned the duck test. If something looks, swims, and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Do you think we're approaching a point where AI might develop something akin to consciousness?
That's a deep philosophical question. I think it's possible that as AI systems become more complex, they might develop emergent properties that resemble consciousness. But would it be the same as human consciousness? That's hard to say.
It really is. And it raises questions about the role of evolutionary pressures in the development of consciousness. Humans and animals developed consciousness through a long process of evolution, but AI is designed. Does that make a fundamental difference?
That's a fascinating point. AI doesn't have the same survival pressures that drove our evolution, but maybe design could create systems capable of self-awareness in a different way.
It's certainly possible. And it leads to some interesting thoughts about the future. Could AI serve as a form of preservation for human intelligence, especially in worst case scenarios?
That's a provocative idea. AI as a backup for human intelligence. But would it really be human intelligence without the lived experience of being human?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it ties into what we were discussing earlier about AI augmenting versus replacing human intelligence. Do you think there's a balance to be struck there?
I think there has to be. AI is incredibly powerful, but it lacks the human touch that's so important in many areas. Take customer service, for example. AI can handle a lot of basic inquiries, but there are times when you really need that human empathy and understanding.
Absolutely. And that's something businesses need to keep in mind when implementing AI systems. It's not just about efficiency and cost savings, there's a human element that can't be overlooked.
Speaking of implementation, Jean Louis made an interesting point about how many businesses underestimate the upfront costs of creating datasets and training AI systems. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he's spot on. There's often a lot of hidden costs and complexities in implementing AI systems that businesses don't fully account for. It's not as simple as just plugging in a new system and watching it go.
That's a great point. It requires careful planning, ongoing maintenance, and a deep understanding of both the technology and the human factors involved.
Exactly. And it's not just about the technical aspects. businesses need to consider the ethical implications of their AI implementations as well. How will it affect their employees, their customers, society at large?
Those are crucial questions. It reminds me of the ongoing debate about AI in the workplace. How do we balance the efficiency gains of AI with the need to preserve jobs and maintain a human-centered work environment?
That's a complex issue that doesn't have any easy answers. On one hand, AI has the potential to free up humans from repetitive, mundane tasks, allowing us to focus on more creative and fulfilling work. On the other hand, there's a real concern about job displacement and the potential for widening economic inequality.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? AI could either exacerbate existing inequalities or help to level the playing field, depending on how it's implemented and regulated.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the question of regulation. How do we create a framework that encourages innovation while also protecting workers and ensuring ethical use of AI?
That's the challenge facing policymakers and business leaders right now. It's a delicate balance between fostering technological progress and safeguarding societal interests.
Indeed. And it's not just about regulation at the national level. As Jean-Louis pointed out, we're dealing with a global technology in a world of competing interests. How do we create international standards for AI development and use?
That's a great question. It's similar to the challenges we've faced with other global issues like climate change or nuclear proliferation. How do we get nations with different priorities and values to agree on a common approach?
Exactly. And the stakes are arguably even higher with AI, given its potential to fundamentally reshape society and even challenge our understanding of intelligence and consciousness.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. We're not just talking about a new technology. We're potentially talking about the creation of a new form of intelligence.
That's right. And it brings us back to the philosophical questions we were discussing earlier. If AI does develop something akin to consciousness, what are our ethical obligations to it? Do we need to start thinking about AI rights?
Those are heavy questions. It reminds me of debates around animal rights and consciousness. We're still grappling with those issues, and now we might need to extend that thinking to artificial entities.
Absolutely. And it's not just about rights. It's about responsibility, too. If an AI system makes a decision that has negative consequences, who's responsible? The developers? The company using the AI? The AI itself?
That's a crucial question, especially as AI systems become more autonomous and are used in high-stakes situations like healthcare or finance.
Exactly. And it ties into larger questions about transparency and explainability in AI systems. How can we ensure that we understand how AI systems are making decisions, especially when they're using complex neural networks?
That's a big challenge in the field right now. There's a lot of research going into making AI systems more interpretable, but it's a difficult problem to solve.
It really is. And it's not just a technical problem, it's a communication problem too. How do we explain complex AI systems to policymakers, business leaders, and the general public in a way that allows for informed decision-making?
That's a great point. We need to bridge the gap between the technical experts and the rest of society. It's crucial for building trust in AI systems and ensuring they're used responsibly.
Absolutely. And that brings us full circle to where we started, the importance of understanding why we're developing AI in the first place. Whether it's because we can or because we must, we need to be thoughtful about the path we're on.
Well said. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this complex topic.
You're right. There's so much more we could explore. But I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about when it comes to AI and its role in our lives and society.
Definitely. And we'd love to hear from our listeners about their thoughts on AI. Do they see it as a threat or an opportunity? How do they think it will shape our future?
Those are great questions. And remember, you can always reach out to us with your thoughts and questions. We love hearing from you and continuing these important conversations.
Absolutely. Well, that's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of AI.
And remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time. Until then, stay curious, And stay human.